Welcome, everyone, to our session on Cloud FinOps Strategy. I'm Varsha Sundar. I am VP Cloud FinOps at Chubb Insurance. I am FinOps Certified Practitioner, and I'm also FinOps Community Ambassador. This is my colleague, Ed Hiraldo.
Hi, yes. So my name is Ed Hiraldo. I'm a senior FinOps cloud engineer at Verisk. I'm also a FinOps certified practitioner, and I've been in the IT industry for close to 20 years, mostly on the development side of things, from web development to desktop application development. And now for the past few years, I've been working on the cloud. So I'm going to start it off. Let's first go over the agenda. So first, we're going to be talking about what Cloud FinOps is. Then we're going to talk about the top challenges to controlling cloud spend. And then we'll dive into ways that we can overcome those challenges through cloud cost optimization. Then we'll go over some FinOps strategy phases. That is the rate-based and resource-based strategies. And then we'll finish it by talking about the different personas that are involved in FinOps. And those are the ones that help us align to the enterprise cloud strategies. And then we'll leave you with some key takeaways. All right, so Cloud FinOps. So what is Cloud FinOps? So Cloud FinOps is about embracing the agility, innovation, and scale of the cloud to maximize the value that it provides to your business through cloud transparency, control, forecasting, and optimization. Now, for the past few years, as we all know, cloud computing has been a big business. Like, the use of the cloud has increased exponentially, especially after the start of the pandemic, when people started working remotely. So to put it into perspective, in 2019, the total cloud spend globally was $243 billion. So move forward to 2022, and the total was $491 billion. So, and this year is projected to increase another 22% to $600 billion. So, with that surge, there's always going to be challenges, especially cost control. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to talk about the challenges. The first one will be low visibility on usage and cost. This is basically a lot of organizations, they don't have the right tools to be able to monitor the cloud and see the usage. So you can't really manage what you can't see nor measure. The second one is complex multi-cloud environments and pricing. Now, the infrastructure cost control has changed dramatically. So before, it used to be that you would go procure some servers, you would negotiate a good pricing, and then you would buy it from your favorite provider. But that's no longer the case. Right now, you can have potentially hundreds of people being part of the development process as well as the provisioning process. So they can just choose and select resources and be subscribing to them constantly. So, and this is completely different than what it used to be. It's very difficult to keep track or to keep control of something that's largely on the fly. The next one is lack of centralized cloud governance. Now, simply put, if there is no centralized governance, it's almost impossible to be able to know or to understand who owns public cloud services, right? And it will be very difficult also to implement procedures and policies, because nobody's going to follow it, pretty much. The next one is provision for peak mindset. What we mean by that is that in order to maximize the value of the cloud, you have to apply the just-in-time, pay-as-you-need mentality. right? Because a lot of organizations, they go into the cloud because they want performance, they want agility, but they don't think about the cost that goes behind it, right? So you don't want to be paying for using 10% of your resource, but paying for 100%, right? That wouldn't make any sense. The next one is cloud ease of use. What that means is the same as before. Developers nowadays, they can just spin an instance, any resources, at any time, from anywhere, and without knowing the consequences behind them. So how do we solve all these issues? Well, that's where FinOps come into place, right? So FinOps is about bringing together all the different teams, whether it's the engineering, finance, and technology, bring them together so that they could work on a common financial goal, right? So first, I want to talk about the cloud first mindset. Having a cloud first mindset as well as architecting solutions for cloud economics, that goes hand in hand because an organization should have to be able to get how do you say? Hold on a second. Give me a second. I lost my track of thought. So an organization should be able to arrive at the most cost-effective solution, cloud solution, right? So, so to meet the requirements. So in this case, investing in platform as a service capability would help, as well as having some cloud-native toolsets. So, so the next one will be adopt a cloud cost optimization framework. So in this one, there are three pillars to every cloud cost optimization framework. The first one will be optimize your resources. The second one would be create visibility and control. And the last one, to establish effective governance. Now, what do we mean by optimize resources? By that, we mean right-sizing resources whenever possible, enabling auto-scaling so that you don't over-provision or under-provision resources, and also creating life cycle management rules so that you can move. If you have storage and you want to move things from one to the other, just create life cycle rules. As far as create visibility and control, what that means is having the right tools so that you can promote transparency in cost allocation and rules. So the next one, establish effective governance. By that we mean making sure processes, toolings, and guardrails are in place. Solutions are in place. The next one is once that's already completed, then we need to have a continuous cost optimization process. So by this, it will mean automating. Whenever you optimize a resource, you want to make sure that you automate it when possible, because you don't want to have to be going back doing the same work over and over again. So, so that's one of the ways, and you can also create guardrails, which Varsha will talk more about that later on. The next one would be to implement a chargeback model. Now, it is important for each team to be able to take responsibility for your own cloud costs, right? So that's what this one is about. And this will actually force you to adopt also a cost optimization framework. Because once you know that you're the one paying for it, obviously you want to make sure that you pay the least possible. The next one is use the right sourcing, pricing, and discounting model. Now, this is where rate-based optimization comes into place. And in the next slide, Varsha will be talking about that. So I'm not going to go deep into that one. And the last one is to establish a cross-functional cloud FinOps team. And this is where all the teams should come together so that they can collaborate and at the same time maintain a cost transparency. So with that being said, I'm going to pass that over to Varsha so that she could walk us through the resource-based and rate-based cost optimization strategies. Varsha?
Thank you, Ed. So moving on. So what happens is in FinOps, we categorize optimization broadly into two categories. The first one being the rate-based optimization, and then the second one is resource-based optimization. So in rate-based optimization, what we are trying to do is we are trying to reduce our spend by having more coverage like savings plans, RIs, which is reserved instances, and other is where the optimization opportunities based on resources come into play. So this is called the rate optimization pyramid that we follow in our organization. So what we do is, for example, when we have EC2s running in our environment, we look at past 30 or 90 days, see the utilization hours that we are being used as enterprise-wide, and then we cover with 50% of, say, 3-year savings plans, and then the next 25% we use 1-year savings plan. Why? Because our load can go up and down. So if we are covered for a year, and then if we need to change, it's easier to change after a year as opposed to when committing to 3 years plan. And then if need be, there are chances of using reserved instances, which is around 15%. And then the remaining 10%, we focus on other resource-based optimization opportunities. So moving on. So next, we're going to talk about resource-based optimization opportunities. So we follow something called FinOps stages. So in the first stage, we do the analysis. So we look at the different, if it's multi-cloud, all different, cloud CSPs and their spend, and then we would look at the different AWS or Azure or GCP services, and then we would look at the BUs that are spending, the resources that are spending. If it is CIO level, then we do CIO level analysis. Then we pick top 5 of the services that are being spent, and then what we do is we pick the first one or the second one of the top 5 services. And then we slice and dice the data based on the region, based on the environment, business unit, which resource is spending more. And then we do something called proof of concept, where we put our theory into test, saying if we propose a theory and then see if it works, if it has any impact or not. And then once that's done and we are successful, we get into the next phase called the awareness phase, where we evangelize and communicate to the broader enterprise saying, hey, there is this opportunity and these are the business units. You can take a look at it and then make changes if it's useful for you. Because like Ed mentioned, accountability is key here. And then finally, we move into something called guardrails, where so far we've done detective work. So now we need to do preventative work. So we don't want this happening over and over again. So we set up some guardrails using policies so this can be avoided in the future. So like I mentioned, the first stage is the analysis phase. We look at the business units involved in the consumption. We look at the resource that is contributing to the consumption, region, environment, etc. And we also try to understand the billing component. So every service may not have, it'll have some direct spend cost, but then there are some hidden settings, or there are some other values that come into play when you look at a particular service. So I'm going to walk through an example, which is Amazon EFS, Elastic File System. So EFS used to be one of our top spend, and we looked at the resources, and then we figured that they used a mode. There are 2 modes, which is bursting and provisional throughput mode, and these resources that were contributing to the maximum spend had provisioned throughput set up, and the default value was set to the max, which is 1024. So for example, if you take one resource in, say, US region, for a month you spend around $6,000. So say if you have 10 resources, you're already spending $60K a month. So then we looked at the resources and we wanted to understand what's going on. And then we realized that there was a chance, there is potential value in reducing the provisional throughput level and with no impact. So we picked a particular resource in a non-dev environment, and then we partnered with the business unit, and then we put our theory into test. And then what we found out was we kept reducing the provisional throughput value lower and lower, and we actually set a value way lower than 100 megabytes per second, saving 90% of the spend per month. So we went from 6,000 to 600. And then what we realized is most of the resources were set at a default value because they had used the same code, and that led to that default value being set high, and the resources were spending a lot more than it should be. And there were some regions where they were spending double because each region has its own spend value or pricing model. So we realized that though the regions that had more spend, we could actually move them to, they were DR backup, so we could move them to different, to United States and then reduce the spend half right away there, plus the 90% save. So what do we, in the POC, what do we look for? We look at the metrics like if there's CPU utilization, there is usage, if there is any impact on the performance, can we really reduce the threshold value if there are any for those services, and then convert potential savings into realized. So now that we've finished phase 2, phase 3 is awareness. So we have councils where we talk about the POCs that we have done with our partners. We let them talk about their experience and spread the opportunities that other BUs can use and then save more money. So we did this in the non-prod environment, and then we moved into production environment, made changes there, and we did see that we were able to reduce spend by 90%. And then we also went one step ahead and thought, how can we educate our developers when they're spinning these resources using code? So we added something called linting rules. So what these linting rules are, they're little snippets where they say, hey, for this particular service, if you set, provision throughput value at 1,024, you're spending so much. Is this what you want to go ahead with? So those are the kind of, linting rules or education tooling that we use to guide our developers and to ensure that not only performance or other factors that is important, but cost is also a key metric when spinning up any resource. So the next one is the guardrail. So what happens is we have, we have reporting that we have set up where we get alerts. So if a specific threshold is met, and if we are spending beyond that threshold for a particular service, then we would get alerts in the report, and then we would go back, take a look at which resource has crossed or breached the threshold, and we would reach out to our business partners and see what's going on. In fact, this actually helped us because we finished our provisional throughput. We had just completed our POC phase, and most of our BUs were adopting, so all the resources were set to a lower value. But one of our business unit actually had spun up with the default value, and immediately we were alerted, and when we reached out, we figured that it was by mistake. It was an accident, and then we were able to reduce cost and not let the resource keep running for a longer time. Then we set up, SCPs, as they say in AWS, which is policy at an enterprise level or an organizational level, where where we said that if somebody needs a threshold value beyond 500 megabytes per second, then they would need an exception to go ahead. If not, they cannot spin up any resource beyond a certain throughput. So there are also some open source tools to create thresholds. So we use some of those to add to our guardrails. So the next is the different personas. So we have FinOps practitioner like myself and Ed, and then we have executives whose buy-in are very important. we have the product owners with whom we work day in and day out to get their approvals. And then we have the engineering team and operation team that actually help us on the ground, make changes, help us test our proof of concept, build a relationship, make changes, push in the change requests, etc. And then finance. So why finance? So we did the POC, we've made changes, we've reduced the cost. But what happens is next is chargeback. So that's where finance gets involved. So what happened in our actual example was after 3 months of making the changes, they came back to us and they're like, why are we spending less in the bill? Like for this, I don't understand what happened. Why are we dropping down? Then when we look back, we realized that that particular BU was one of our offenders and they had made the changes for EFS and they were saving more money. So finance didn't know or they weren't aware of what happened. So they were alarmed by the lower spend. And then there's procurement, which they help us with all the procurement initiation. So this is a different FinOps persona. If you go to FinOps community, each persona has a certification of their own. So if you fall into one of these personas and you would like to explore, so you can go look at their website and look at the different certifications they offer. So key results. So what happened as an end result of all the POCs, the changes, etc., right? So cost. The cost went down. We were able to optimize. So we were able to convert our potential savings into realized savings. We saved over millions of dollars. And then there's waste management because we stopped unnecessary resources being spun up, keep them running. And we terminated them because some of the resources were not wanted at all. So that happened. And then collaboration. So we were able to collaborate and create awareness across the enterprise. And now the maturity model for that particular service went from crawl to walk to run stage. So this actually, the 4 stages complete the maturity model of FinOps, the one that FinOps community has put together, which is inform, iterate, and optimize. So we start with the inform phase, then we iterate, and then we optimize. So what next? So there's focus where, in a multi-cloud environment, different CSPs have their bills in a different fashion. And sometimes it's hard to understand the terminologies between these different, CSPs. Also, for example, it's accounts in AWS, it's subscriptions in Azure. So it's very confusing. So what does focus do is it helps to understand the billing data better. It creates consistency between multiple vendors. It helps to maintain, cost and standard and usage. So you can read your bills better and put them together. This also helps in chargeback. When somebody comes and says, hey, how much am I spending? And how much am I spending in particular, CSP, or where is my money going? So focus actually helps in those. And another example that I would like to give for the different stages is we also had another service which used to ingest data. And at one point, what happened was we were spending a lot more than the budgeted amount for that particular service. So when we went through the billing, we tried to understand what's going on. We realized that we were ingesting more data, and because of which we were spending more. And why we were ingesting more data was because somebody had, by default, checked all the logs to be ingested, so that, and nobody was looking at those logs, and it was not needed. So what we realized is because something is there and it's a check mark, some developers just go ahead, they feel free, and then they just choose those settings. But in the end, those small settings actually contribute a lot to the bill. So then when we went ahead and we terminated some of the logs And then we looked at our billing. We actually spent over 60% of our spend. So here are some of the key takeaways.
All right, so first, can you hear me? Yes. First is to use lifecycle management and auto-scaling, which we discussed before. Also set policies and limitations to avoid creating expensive resources. Set thresholds and anomaly detections. And finally, understand the components contributing spend in a service. Go ahead. So thank you very much.
Yeah, so we leave you with our key takeaways. And like I said, small change, small settings actually contribute to major spend. So yeah, thank you, everyone.
Right. Thanks a lot.
Have questions?
Yeah. So how are companies organizing their FinOps team? Are they creating like dedicated teams within FinOps or and they call themselves like FinOps?
Okay. So FinOps, if you go to the FinOps community, so it can be under a CIO or a CTO or a CFO. So the way it works is there's a dedicated global team of FinOps practitioners, hierarchy in different ways. And then what is recommended is each BU have their point of contact with who is a FinOps personnel in that BU. So at a global level, we look at the different, chargebacks, different opportunities, and then we collaborate with those individual FinOps personas in those different BUs to educate and to interact about the different, ways to save for that BU. So it's more like a hub and spoke model that we kind of follow.
So in your company, you have this main person, FinOps practitioner, right? And then each individual business unit would have a representative.
Right, that's correct, yeah.
So you've done a lot of work of bringing the teams together, and I understand that once you show how much things cost, that's how you really get people to reel it in.
Right.
My question is, with the work that's been done, do you go back to run your own analysis to identify low-hanging fruit to say, hey, even though we're charging back, we've noticed that, maybe engineering and operations team, let's automate the provisioning of infrastructure this way, multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, so you don't run into issues, something to put that way. And you mentioned using open source tools for reporting. I got to imagine you might also glean some other open source software titles that you could use to
Automate
save
those.
money. So is that something that you'll on your own identify and make a certain group to put that in place, and those are additional guardrails, or do you still find the need to collaborate and share?
So, good question. So what we do is initially the low-hanging fruits, like some of the tooling just gives you right away the low-hanging fruits, right? So what we do is we take them. They also, there are tools that would help you like start stop where you can just go and make changes like have as tags. So those are simple to do. But as like for EFS or the other service that I mentioned, which was not part of the regular tooling, right? So what we do, that's why in the POC phase, we collaborate with an engineer to get their perspective, and then we dig deeper as to why certain things were set up in a certain way. Then we would do like a postmortem, and then we would make changes in the code so that it doesn't occur. So that's where the different personas come into play, where you interact with different personas, and then the goal is to help the enterprise to save money.
Did you look at any commercial software to do all this, or you kind of built everything on your own?
So there are two things. One, we did have some commercial software, but that's, like I mentioned, those are like, they give out of the box, low-hanging fruits. But some of these, we take that as part of reports and dashboards, but then we we would do a deeper analysis as FinOps practitioners ourselves. Would you like to add?
Yeah, so basically different companies, I think I got it.
That's fine.
So different companies, they do it different ways. Like in my company, we do a lot of things internally as well. We don't go so much outside, but again, some of the companies prefer to get a tool from outside. So it just depends on you know, the budget for the company and whether they have the resource to be able to do it in-house. So that's just the difference between them.
So if you had resources to do it in-house, you think you could do it better than the third-party tools or something?
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah, it also
so-
depends on the company's maturity model, how big the company is, what's the spend like. Say if you have over 60, 70 million dollars, I think you would need more resources sometimes, because also it depends on how many different BUs you have. You know, if it's in APAC or other places, you have like a sunset model that you need to follow. So that's why, you know, having FinOps personas or FinOps representatives in each BU helps, along with the tooling and doing an in-house analysis.
And like Varsha said before as well, that's why it's good to have meetings internally, you know, between all the business units, having at least once a month, if possible, even more often, so that you can share different ideas as well and try to implement the same in all the other divisions. So.
Could you name some of those tools maybe that you might look at or you have in-house?
I don't know if it's,
Maybe the gentleman has some?
yeah, I'm not sure if we.
Yeah, if you go to the FinOps Foundation, there is a page where there are all those different third-party tools and the ratings and, you know, different services that they offer. So that. Because we don't represent them, and say if I say one over the other, I think it's not fair. Even naming them, right? It depends. You know, some companies have something, some may have something else. Just because I say something, it's not necessary that it would help with somebody else. Sure, but again, how many?
Let me just ask, this is, it's not a vendor per se, it's no open cost, using, you heard of that?
I'm not familiar with that one. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one.
All right.
Any other questions?
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.